You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Mike Olivas.
Guys, Ian is also episode 57. I asked him to come back to the show so we can dive in a little bit deeper into sales. As a CEO for 2 decades, Ian started, sold, and grew his business services and technology companies from zero to over $1 billion in valuation. Ian has since spent years researching how customers make decisions. His modern approach to sales and marketing is known for helping organizations around the world achieve explosive growth. A leading authority on accelerating business growth, Ian is currently recognized as one of the 30 global gurus in sales. He's a co-author of the best-selling book, Same Side Selling, and hosts the weekly Same Side Selling podcast available on iTunes. And you can read hundreds of his articles on Forbes and Inc. Ian lives in Washington, D.C. area with his 2 adult-ish children, a dog, and a wonderful wife that he does not deserve. To inspire us with modern approach to growing business and on the same side with our clients. Please join me in welcoming Ian Altman.
All right, Ian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Welcome back to the show.
I know. It's like a bad penny. I just keep coming back.
Thank you for jumping back on. Well, I asked you to come back on because I was really excited and obviously a little bit disappointed when I wasn't able to keep talking to you the last time, because sales, definitely, I think any entrepreneur that was a salesperson before they started their business just holds a big piece of their heart, you know, and I think that's important for me to also show our listeners what the book's about, but also kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of the sales tactics to give some value out to you guys listening today, and the ladies, of course, as well. Ian was episode 56. Just don't mark me on that, but it's about to launch by the time you're listening to this. Go back and check out episode 56 if you'd like. It would be February 22nd. So if you're listening and you're interested in taking out our first episode, talk about Ian's journey along with the book. Ian, we're going to jump into some sales. Let's talk a little bit about what you feel about persistency in the sales force.
What do you mean when you say persistency? What do you mean?
Well, when do you quit, right? When do you know when to quit? Because a lot of people are talking about, people look at marketing and sometimes they equate it to sales. For example, I've spoken and I've had others in different sales training where it takes 13 times for someone to see your ad to make a decision. So in sales, you got to knock on their door on every holistic approach from Facebook, Instagram, email, LinkedIn, and bug them until they say no. What is the time to say yes or no?
Well, let me give everybody kind of a different perspective on this, which is, rather than how many times do I have to bang my head against the wall until something happens and maybe I break through, instead, let's think about how can we better target the people who we're best at serving. So in the old movie Glengarry Glen Ross, there's a concept that Alec Baldwin's character talks about called ABC, always be closing. And there's this epic scene about him talking about you're always closing and always pushing for the sale. And in same side selling, we advance a concept called FIT, which is finding impact together, FIT. So instead of always be closing, we're trying to find impact together, meaning in whatever business you offer, there are people who have problems they're looking to solve that you're probably really good at solving. And the person who didn't find much interest in what you had the first 3 times they heard about it likely isn't going to care about it the next 3 times unless their situation has changed or unless your message resonates in a different way with them. So we could say, look, from a marketing standpoint, yeah, people need to see stuff enough times so that they start getting comfortable. But moreover, if we talk specifically about the problems we're good at solving, then our real challenge is this. Instead of thinking, how do I get this person to buy from me? We should enter these conversations thinking, has this individual, meaning the person who's buying from me, have they convinced me that they have a problem that's worth solving, that I'm good at solving? And if they haven't, then it's really not a good use of either of our time to continue this. So instead of thinking, I have this thing to sell, you should buy it. Oh, you don't want to buy it right now? Okay, how about now? Okay, no, now? No? Okay, how about now? And it just gets annoying.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you're repelling people who don't even want to hear from you. Instead of, imagine if you started the conversation and said, look, when my clients come to me, they're usually facing one of these 2 or 3 problems. They either have this challenge, or that challenge. For the right people, they tell us, wow, we deliver amazing results, but only about half the people we talk to are the right fit for how we approach it. I don't yet know whether or not we can help you, but if you're facing one of those challenges, I'm happy to learn more to see if we might be able to help.
Okay.
Well, in that context, go ahead.
You mentioned something where I think to try to give the clarity to a lot of salespeople out there that are just that are banging their heads against the wall, like you mentioned. When do they just? I mean, I guess do they say no when the time comes and they ask those specific questions and they just simply feel, I don't think I can help you. And I think there's versus trying to find a way to help them.
Well, guess what? What it comes down to is this: is that there are people that have the problem that you solve, and they know it. There are people who have the problem and they don't know it. And then there are people who don't have the problem at all. The people who don't have the problem at all, you can spend all the time in the world. It'd be like if I was a doctor who had the best procedure for carpal tunnel syndrome, and your insurance covered it 100%, you had instant recovery, you would feel great, but you're not going to care unless you have carpal tunnel. Or unless you, and if you don't think you have carpal tunnel, it's an even harder sell, which means I have to help you become aware of the symptoms that might be an indicator that you have that condition. But if I just was saying to you, oh, we're the best surgeons, and oh, let me give you a discount, or oh, the recovery is great, but you don't think you have the condition, you don't care. And it's the same sort of thing with whatever people are selling. So if you sell to the problems rather than selling to the features and benefits, you're more likely to entice someone's interest. So we want to think about it so that anytime you're speaking to a potential client, you're not saying, here's the service I offer. Instead, you're saying, here are the problems I solve. So let me give you an example.
Yes, please.
So in my business, I could say to people, oh, well, I help people with sales effectiveness, and I help people with marketing messaging, and I help people with their growth strategies. And those are all nice. But instead, if someone says, what do you do? I said, well, gee, people usually come to me because either they have great stuff, but their message falls on deaf ears. Their clients always focus on price instead of value, and they just can't seem to stand out compared to the competition, even though they know they're head and shoulders above the competition. So for people facing that, I've often taken them companies from 17 million to 100 million, companies from 20% of their team to 95% of the team hitting their numbers within a year. But I don't yet know if my approach would be a fit for you. I'm happy to learn more to see if I might be able to help. Well, now the people who are having that problem are acutely interested. The people who aren't having that problem, they now know what kinds of problems I solve. It just may not be a fit for them right now.
That's a great kind of caveat into this next question that I wanted to talk about, and might be going reverse a little bit, but that's okay. The qualification process. What are most companies doing wrong to qualify leads, or what would you say they should be doing? Because you have a different outlook on this in the book. It's definitely different from asking those specific questions on, for example, do they qualify to be a potential client for the service or product I have?
Sure.
What's your outlook on qualification?
Well, so it's not so much what are companies doing wrong, it's people are doing what they've been taught to do. So what people have been taught to do historically is they qualify deals based on, historically, people would use something called BANT: budget, authority, need, and time sensitivity. So the idea was, well, do they have budget? Does the individual I'm talking to have the authority to make this decision? Do they have a need? And is it time sensitive? Like, I got to get this right away, which is all great in concept. It's just budget is the most misleading piece of information ever. So if you live in a place where it's extremely hot and all of a sudden your air conditioner dies in the dead of summer, You may not have it budgeted, but guess what? You're going to figure out where to sacrifice elsewhere to spend money on that air conditioner.
Yeah.
Authority is something that you could be talking to the CEO, but it might be a CEO who says, yeah, I don't make any of these decisions unless I have consensus from my team. So all of a sudden on paper, they have authority, but not really. So those qualifications aren't really relevant in 2020 and beyond. So instead, what we have to think about is, how do people make decisions? Well, we've done research, we shared in the book, with over 10,000 executives on how they make and approve decisions. And we run them through this exercise that says, look, someone on your team comes to you, they want to spend $20,000 on this thing. I call it a Gazettenblatt because I wanted something that was easy to spell, pronounce, and remember. Yeah. So you've got this Gazettenblatt, and the idea is someone comes to you and says, okay, we got to buy this thing. What are the questions you have to have answered as that executive in order to either approve or deny this request? And the questions that come back across over 10,000 individuals are the same questions every time. And the questions people ask are, what problem does this solve? Why do we need it? And what's the likely outcome or result? So what problem does it solve? Why do I need it? And what's the likely outcome or result? Now, the distant fourth in all this is what are the alternatives? Which you would think is a really important one, but the reality is, if you answer the first three really well, the fourth one becomes implied. Meaning, if I had a vendor and I'm in complete sync with them about what problem they solve for me and why I need their help, and it's also the vendor I feel has the greatest likelihood of delivering the best results, that's my vendor.
Yeah.
So if I know that, then the qualification process changes entirely, because if that's the information people need to have to make or approve a decision, then what I need to do is shift my focus that says, okay, when I go meet with a client, I need to think about the key piece of information I need to know. And so we represent this in same-side selling through something called the same-side quadrants. And the same-side quadrants the idea is that you take a blank sheet of paper, you draw a vertical line down the center of the page, horizontal line across the page, creating 4 individual quadrants. If you want, I can walk you through what's in each one of those quadrants.
Please.
So the idea is that in the upper left quadrant, this is a method for taking notes and meeting. The upper left quadrant, we take notes about their issue, meaning what problem are they trying to solve? So it might start in a conversation. If you had contacted me, I might say, hey, Mike, what is it specifically that you were looking to solve? What was it that piqued your interest for us to even have this discussion today? Oh, I'm trying to solve this problem. Oh, really? Tell me more about it. In the upper right quadrant, we take notes about the impact and relative importance for them to solve this, meaning the impact is what happens if you don't solve this, which is usually quantifiable in dollars. It says, well, if I don't solve this, I lose market share and I'm going to lose this much business. If I don't solve this, I'm going to lose employees. If I don't solve this, I'm going to lose out of the competition. Really, by how much we want to quantify it. And importance is the idea of how important is this compared to other things on their plate, because it might be something that's $1 million problem, but they have $1 billion problem behind it that you don't know about.
Right.
In the lower left quadrant, we take notes about what does success look like, or what we call results. So the idea is, look, just because you spend money with us doesn't mean we're successful. What could we measure together 6 months down the road so that you and I know that this was a good decision? And we start documenting that. And the lower right quadrant, we take notes about something called others impacted, which is, well, who else needs to be involved in this? So historically, people have been taught, well, you got to know who the decision maker is. So we ask somebody, hey, who's the decision maker? Which could rank as the worst question ever in the world of sales and business development.
Yeah.
Because it kind of implies that whoever you're talking to isn't.
Right.
So it'd be like, so Mike, clearly the company couldn't entrust this decision to you. So who is the decision maker? And it's like you get this instant adversarial trap.
Who's responsible enough for me to talk to you about
exactly because it's clearly not you, right? It's like it's like there's got to be someone who's not a loser like you. Who would it be? And it just unravels everything. But the idea is that, so if you look at those quadrants, the upper left of issue corresponds to what problem are we trying to solve. The upper right quadrant of impact and importance corresponds to why do they need it. The lower left quadrant, results, corresponds to what's the likely outcome or result. So the reason why focusing on that element of results is so important is because too often we're selling resources, not results. And people, there's never been anybody who, let's say they were trying to hire someone who was going to do some work for them. No one's ever thinking to themselves, you know what I'm really looking for? I'm looking for someone to give me 3 hours of effort on something. Now, what you want is, hey, I want to solve this problem. And what does it cost for me to solve that problem? So, if someone's trying to hire an attorney, they don't want to hire so many hours. They just want to get the result. If they're hiring someone who's a graphic designer, they don't want to hire someone for so many hours. They want, hey, I want a great graphic design that's really going to attract customers.
Right.
And so when we focus on results, it pivots that. And what my clients have found is that when people focus on results, the customer is willing to spend more just because you're talking about results compared to the people who aren't. And putting that another way, what you have to ask yourself is, how much less would you have to pay for it to be a good deal, but you don't get the results that you need? And the answer is, you don't have to pay 100% less because it's not a good deal if you don't get the results you need.
Right. I think is there a specific quadrant that you feel in some companies that is overlooked the most?
Well, so of these, the most important quadrants are the upper right and the lower left, meaning the impact.
That was my favorite. Yeah.
Impact, importance, and results. Those are the ones that tell you, is this deal real or isn't it? Now, the lower right quadrant, others impacted. The reason why that's so important is everyone's had a deal where they thought it was a done deal. They thought everything was going to be successful. They thought they had won the deal, and then someone's name comes up in the 11th hour who derails it. And what happens is people don't know how to ask that question. So instead of asking who's the decision maker, what we would say is, if we went through impact and we went through results, we'd say, so listen, we talked about this in terms of impact. We talked about results. Who else in the organization is most directly impacted by this? Who else would have the biggest opinion about how we measure success, and may even question what you and I agreed to on how we're going to measure success? You start getting those names in the loop, and then you get to ask the following question, which is, once we know who those people are, then we get to ask, so what's the best way for you and I to include them in this discussion in a way that's comfortable for you? And what that does is it makes it so that we're not doing an end around. We've now put our prospect on the same side of the table with us, and how do we include that other person in a way that's comfortable for you?
Are you struggling to grow your business? Have you ever thought, man, I wish Mike could answer my specific questions about my business? Well, you're in luck, and I can help. Go to michaellevis.com and sign up to schedule a free live on-air call today. That's right. For a limited time, we're recording real business owners with real struggles.
Within the book, you mentioned integrity, like integrity sales.
Yep.
Let's dive into that a little bit, if you don't mind, Ian. Like, what are we talking about? Because there's a lot of chat about, obviously, all over the web and videos about transparency and transparency winning across the board. Organic sales, different kind of key bomb terms out there, kind of getting thrown out there. But talk a little bit about what integrity sales should be for a company.
Well, integrity-based selling means that you value the results for your client above the sale. Meaning, if I can't deliver what you need, then I got no business selling you something. And here's the unfortunate reality. When people get into a scarcity mindset, they think, well, I just got to make any sale, even if it's not a good sale for the client. And the problem with that is that 20 years ago, if you delivered something to a client and they didn't get the results they were looking for, they might tell a couple people in their building or nearby. Today, they'll tell millions of people they've never even met.
Yeah.
So we can't afford to have clients who don't get great results.
So log on to Yelp.
Yeah. I mean, So the idea is that with integrity-based selling, it's not like some great altruistic thing. It just makes sense in today's world. It's like, look, if you don't deliver good results, word travels quickly. It's like when people come to me, when they're looking at either the same side selling academy that we have, or people are looking for me to speak or work with their teams, I don't have to hide in the shadows. It's just, we've got, page upon page upon page of testimonials from people saying, we grew from this to that. Gee, we had tried 5 different things before. Here's the results we got now. So I'm never really selling anything. I'm just saying, hey, is this program a good fit for you? And the first question I ask is, well, so what is it that your team is struggling with today? And what does success look like for us? So I can evaluate whether or not I think I can solve that issue. Because if I can't, I'll refer them to someone else. In fact, I just had this last week, someone had contacted me about speaking at an event. I asked them what they were looking for. And I said, you know what, I could speak on that, but there's someone else who's fantastic on that topic. Let me give you their name. And they started laughing. I said, what's so funny? They said, well, we found them, but they didn't have that many references or testimonials. And so we were really comfortable working with you. I said, you know what? You'll be really well served with them. And so last week he spoke at their event and they were like, oh, he was perfect for what we needed. By the way, can you help us with this other stuff?
Right. I think there's a huge debate around value and price out there. What do you think about that in terms of pushing value or in terms of pushing price?
Well, so I believe that people who sell entirely on price are not sellers, they're order takers.
Sure.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that, because there are certain businesses that do really well because it's the least expensive way. It's the cheapest way to get the product. And if you're selling a commodity, so a commodity is something that basically no one can differentiate between one person's offering or another other than price and delivery. So it comes down to price, delivery, and service. That's all you can differentiate on if it's a true commodity. Now, if you're not selling a true commodity, then you can't fall into the trap of competing on price, because we just established a minute ago that if you don't get the right results, it doesn't matter what you paid, it wasn't a good deal. So if we know that, then it means that we need to focus on the results, not on price. So the mistake that a lot of people make is that for a lot of organizations, people are better equipped to deal with something that will never happen than they are well equipped to deal with pricing pressure. So, so do you grow up in the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you'll know this. So Mike, what are the 3 things you're supposed to do if your clothes catch on fire?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll. Awesome. So Mike, are you more likely or less likely to catch fire than you are to face pricing pressure? Which is more likely, that you're going to face pricing pressure or that your clothes are going to catch on fire?
Face pricing pressure.
Face pricing pressure. Perfect. Okay. So Mike, what are the 3 things that you should do when you face pricing pressure?
Stop, drop, and roll.
So the problem is, by the way, what happens is that's what people say. They're like, they stumble. They're like, stop, drop, and roll. And that's what most people do.
Right.
They face pricing pressure. They stop what they're doing. They drop their price and they roll over. Right?
Yeah,
So
I love that.
So that's what happens. But instead, what we need to do is we need to think about, look, what's an approach that we can equip our team with, that we can be equipped with, so that when we face pricing pressure, we know how to deal with it. And so there's a concept that I speak about called stop, swap, and trade. So the first thing is that I can never give a unilateral concession. So what's a unilateral concession? A unilateral concession means that I give somebody the exact same product or service that I was originally charging a higher price for at a lower price. So I come to them and say, oh, here's this product or service that I offer. It's $10,000. The client says, what are you, crazy? It's too much. And they go, all right, $7,500. So, and the problem with that, so years ago, we did a renovation in our house. We had an original contractor who we ended up having to fire because the guy was a mess. I mean, nothing was being done right. It was a horrible experience. I wrote an article about it, I think, in my column in Inc. at the time, that said, home renovation nightmare, what HGTV doesn't tell you. I mean, it was just awful. But so we had to go find an electrician. And so I contacted a buddy and said, it was a general contractor, and said, hey, can you refer an electrician? That's where we're at in the project. I don't even have a general contractor. I need someone who I can just rely on, who will do great. So this guy comes out to me and says, looks at the project and says, yeah, I can do this thing. It's $12,500. It'll be $12,500, do the electrical on the project. I said, great. I put into my spreadsheet for the project $15,000, figuring electrical always costs more.
Sure.
And I told the guy, look, in 6 weeks, we're going to start this project. So 2 weeks go by. He calls me up and says, "Oh, Mr. Altman, we really want this project. And I was thinking about it. We could probably do this thing for 11,000, if you can start pretty soon." I said, I appreciate that. That's great. We're actually about 4 weeks out. Man, it's been 2 weeks. I told him originally 6 weeks. Now it's 2 weeks later. I told him we're about a month out.
Yeah.
So then 3 weeks later, he calls up and says, "Look, I haven't heard from you. And if you can start this thing next week, we're going to have a crew ready and we'll do it for 9,500. And I said, "Okay." Right. And so they started that week, which was the 6 weeks that I originally told them that I was willing to pay 15,000 for, that we paid 9,500 for.
He just negotiated his own price all the way down, put his back against the wall in time.
Yeah. And I guarantee his story to people is, "Oh, this guy was a tough negotiator." And I was happy to pay whatever he wanted just to get the job done right. Now, the thing is that, in that case, in his mind, it wasn't happening yet, and it must be because of price. And the reality is that sometimes it's just the timing isn't right, and sometimes it's that you're not listening to what the client's saying. So this model of stop, swap, and trade instead gives us a different framework. See, if I agree to do the same work for less money, I'm teaching you as the client some dangerous things. The first thing I'm teaching you is that I was ripping you off to begin with, because now if I can do it for less for the same thing, then if I can do the same work for less, then you're thinking, well, wait a minute, if I had said yes before, they would have been ripping me off. So where does trust go? It was up here, and now trust just dropped because now they can't believe you. So in the future, you give them a price, they're going to assume that it's overcharged. The second thing is that if I give you a unilateral concession, what I'm teaching you is you may as well always ask for a discount, because if I give you the discount, you don't have to give anything up for it. Right? You'll get the same thing for less money, so you may as well keep asking. And eventually you get down to zero margin, and you say, "Okay, well, I won't go any lower." So what if you stop discounting sooner? So the model of stop, swap, and trade, first you stop by understanding. So someone says, "Well, it's too expensive." Well, do you mean that even if you got these results, it would be too expensive? Do you mean it's too expensive compared to other people who don't offer the same level of quality? Help me understand what you mean by that. Then we get into swap. And the idea of swap is, what can I swap with them if they want a lower price? So someone might say, "Oh, well, gee, you said this is going to be $10,000 for this thing that's going to be delivered in a month. We only have 7,500. Well, listen, if you can wait for it to be delivered in 4 months, I could probably do it for 8,500. Right? Well, gee, in this deliverable, here are these 8 things. If we can scale back 2 of those, I can probably do it for a little bit less. But my understanding is you really needed that other capability. So the idea of swap is, can you swap scope of work? Can you swap payment terms? Can you swap delivery schedule? Can you swap level of skill? So I might say, well, the electrician could have said, "Well, look, if you can deal with an apprentice instead of a master electrician, I could do this thing for 9,500. I would have said, "Well, no, I need the master electrician." Okay, right? But now you're not being inflexible. You're giving the person options, just not options they would like. And the last part of the stop, swap, and trade is the trade. And at the trade, the idea is, what can you get that doesn't necessarily cost your client money, but could be beneficial to your business if you want to give a small concession? So you might be dealing with a purchasing or procurement person who says, "Look, if I don't come back with 2%, it looks like I'm not even doing my job." You say, "Okay, look, in order to do the 2%, because I know this guy Ian said you can't give a unilateral concession. So I can do the 2%, but I can do that in exchange for a video testimonial, in exchange for us co-presenting at a conference together. Some sort of marketing benefit that you can get that candidly the client the next time around says, "Dude, don't ask for the discount. It was such a hassle to do that testimonial. It was too much work. Just pay their price." But the idea is that you need to have something that is a consistent process to follow, because if you know what to do when your clothes catch on fire, but you don't have a repeatable process for dealing with pricing pressure, that's our own fault.
Do you have any clients out there? Because it seems like obviously product and services, but being a lot of service-based listeners as well out there that have an objection that they have to overcome, Ian, that is about margin.
Okay. So what kind of objection do they have with respect to margin? Because you and I are going to role play it. You're going to play the service provider, and or I'll be the person selling it, and you're the client. Just give me the context, and that way people can hear what it might sound like.
Yeah, I would say it sounds like you have a lot of margin on this, because I can see, competitors and different rates out there that are similar, but you're more expensive.
Got that. So Mike, one of the things is that anytime we look at a project like this, there are 4 distinct steps that we take that not everyone takes. And the only way we can get the price down to the points that you're talking about is if we cut some corners in those areas. And that would jeopardize the results that you're looking for that you and I talked about. And it's not something that we're comfortable with as a vendor, because it exposes our clients to risk. And I know not every vendor feels that way, and some people may feel comfortable doing that. We're not. Do you think we're making a mistake?
Got it. Yeah, I think.
And that's the way I would address it, because then it's the client saying, well, no, because I need that. And they might say, well, the other people say they're doing that. Well, you know what? Here are some questions to ask. If someone else is doing every bit the same quality work as we are for less money, of course you'd work with them. But our clients tell us consistently that we deliver a better result per invested dollar for them than what they're getting elsewhere. And if you weren't seeing that, you wouldn't come to us. And I'm guessing the reason those clients come back to us time and time again is because we're proving that. But obviously, you need to feel comfortable. What would you like to do? And you notice in each one of those cases, I end with a question that kind of puts the ball in their court to actually make a decision or do something.
There's a lot of sales managers out there. And I think also from small business perspective, CEOs play that role a lot of times, right?
Sure.
Or the owners of the business sometimes have to play that role as they naturally kind of start growing. What kind of advice, Ian, would you be able to give sales managers out there that are just pulling their hair out about not being able to get performance, hitting numbers, KPIs? What kind of high level advice, or if you can go deep as well, but what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, it's a simple concept, which is very often in every other area of business, people have a process and a system and a structure they follow. So if you're manufacturing stuff, no one says, hey, you know what? Today we're going to hire somebody. We're going to let them figure out how to manufacture this thing. They get to set their own rules, their own timing. They have their own way of manufacturing our products. No. It's like if someone has a software development company, they don't say, yeah, and you get to write code the way you want to. Then they say, here are our standards for how we do stuff. And so having a process or a system for how people actually handle the sales process, from the prospecting to how they qualify opportunities, how they follow up with people, is critical. And if you don't have a consistent process, then you don't have any way of knowing whether your performance issues are related to individuals or markets or your products. You just know that some people perform better than others. So it's critical to have a consistent process and then hold people accountable. So the first thing is that if you don't know what problems you solve and for whom, then you shouldn't have any salespeople. Because if you don't know the audience you serve and why they would care about what you have, then you're setting people up for failure right away. So first you need to know that. Then we need to develop clear criteria that says, so why would someone spend the money on our stuff? Not why do we want to sell it, but why would someone on the other end actually buy it? And then it's just about having the discipline that says, show me the same side quadrant for this meeting you just had. Instead of saying to them, so, gee, how was the meeting? You say, so what did we learn in terms of impact for that client? What did we learn about results? If you were them, why would you or wouldn't you make this decision? Right? So then we start thinking like our customers instead of being hopeful people trying to sell stuff.
No, that's great advice. I want to remind people where they can find you before we jump off here as well, and also where they can find the book for it, Ian.
Absolutely. So if you go to ianaltman.com, you'll find everything. Obviously, same side selling. It's everywhere books are sold. You might see it in airports right now. You might see it in physical bookstores, or obviously on Amazon. If you're an Audible person, a lot of people who are listening to podcasts are also Audible people. It's on Audible. Jack Quarles, my co-author, he and I actually recorded the book and had some fun with it. So there's some stuff in the Audible version you may not get elsewhere. And then the The digital academy that we have is called the Same Side Selling Academy, which is just samesidesellingacademy.com. And it's just filled with lessons and monthly Q&As and all sorts of things. We have a whole category in there called the Objection Clinic, which is all these little micro lessons for what do you do when this happens? What do you do when that happens? And those become pretty powerful tools for people.
If you're listening and you have a sales force or you are the sales force, I love the book, Ian, and that's why I wanted to have you on a couple of times. I love just the other angle concept. I think that there's a lot of great, let's say, old school ideas that have been passed down that are not as relevant as same side selling will show you today. So definitely get a chance to go check out the book reviews, all that stuff that's out there. I've seen it, I've read it, and I've listened to it because I'm a listener. I'm sure you guys are all, like Ian said as well, that are listening to the podcast. But check out IanAltman.com. Ian, thanks so much again for your time.
Mike, thanks.
Life Nation, you got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Leibus, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.